Hello, friends, and welcome to your Daily Detroit, sharing what to know and where to go in Southeast Michigan. It is Tuesday, December 13th, 2022, and since it's Tuesday, it also means Fletcher Sharpe. It also means a ton of sports, and we do have some great things to talk about. Fletcher Sharpe, good to see you in the studio.
Yeah, it's good to be back. Took a little trip this weekend to go up north. Some people go to see the leaves change. I go to see the leaves fall off the tree and just the bare trees. It's pretty breathtaking when you can go, even if it is as cold as it is right now.
Look, Michigan is beautiful in 4 seasons, especially when it comes to our natural environment. Let's get into the big stories. The two things we're going to really focus on today, we're going to talk about the Lions because there's a lot to talk about. And then Detroit City FC, some signings, a brand new signing that we need to walk through. But let's get with the Lions. Let's start with that first. They beat the Vikings 34-23. And I just want to say, Fletcher, I picked them to win this one.
Honestly, you weren't alone. It's one of the few times that a Detroit team has been at home and been favored against a team that has a way better record than them. A lot of my Detroit Lions fans were like, look at us, we have a chance over the Vikings. And I had a few of my Vikings friends were like, why is that even the case? They're a terrible team. I know they're riding high off a few wins, but you know, we're better. Than the game ended. And it's like, it's because you got Kirk Cousins as your quarterback. That's why they were favored over you. And it showed, even with Jared Goff, who was not sacked at all. His offensive line really kept him up. 27 completions, 330 yards, 3 touchdowns. Pretty good QBR rating, pretty good overall rating. Didn't get much from the run game, but honestly, they were throwing the ball enough that, you know, it worked well enough. Jamison Williams got his first catch for a touchdown, which is honestly every rookie's dream, is your first catch to be a touchdown that helps propel your team forward in a game that really matters. Good to see him out there. I know it probably won't be much of a factor going down the line for this season. Just really out there to get his legs wet. Glad to see him out there making some plays, though. If he keeps progressing the way he's progressing off this injury, he should be great coming into next year, or even maybe some of the postseason, if there is postseason talk, which I can't
really
believe that that's like a thing that came out of my mouth right now.
There is a pitcher of blue Kool-Aid between us. I have a glass for me. Will you take a glass of blue Kool-Aid?
No way.
No way?
No way.
Why not? Because I think we can win out. Look, playoffs is out of our hands at this point. I think in order for us to get in the playoffs, a lot of other things have to happen. It is not in our control. What is in our control is I think it's possible to win out the next 4 games of this schedule. At least 3 out of 4, but I think 4 out of 4 is possible.
You're talking to the same person who, young, very young, made a trade for Peyton Manning about 5 weeks before the Colts played the Lions at Thanksgiving, because I knew that he'd have a pretty big game against them, and I wanted to get him to help boost my season. And he ended up having the best fantasy football game ever from a quarterback perspective. I think about 350, 400 yards, 6 touchdowns. Like, he blew them out entirely. Like, there were kids crying at that game, and I was like, I should feel sad, but points. So, like, yeah, and until I don't have thoughts about, well, this guy's going off against them, it should be fantasy points, or maybe someone made it better until I don't have those thoughts with the Lions going into stuff. Like, I will never be like, all right, I'm back on the bandwagon. I'm back to being a fan. No. And those thoughts won't go away anytime soon, because I've been hurt by them many, many times. And unlike some, you know, not that sensible people, when things hurt me enough times, I'm like, I'm good. And Lions fans, I really give you credit. You guys have unshakable faith. It's this team can put out like, hey, we're going to play in a burning mud pit, and you'll get 10,000 people to be like, I'm there to watch them play in this mud pit. And that's props to them. I give you so much credit because I do not have the fortitude to do that.
I mean, I'm a man who is friends with Snuggie Jesus at the tailgate, and I have had drinks with General Nuisance. But here's the thing. I share your skepticism for all of it in general. But I think, one, we've already far outperformed what I think we would do this season.
Oh, they've doubled my win total.
Right. I think 500 is a really reasonable goal. I think the stretch goal is 9 or 10 wins, and I think it's all possible. I think the playoffs are completely out of our hands, and that's our own fault because, look, it's still a whole season. We can't forget that those games happened, although there is improvement. I'm not exactly sure what happened in the in-between here to change this. That's where I'm sitting here going, how can both of these teams exist in the same season?
I think it was the firing of the defensive backs coach. with someone else assuming his roles. I don't think he was totally at fault, but I do think he did contribute something, because you don't just all of a sudden lose a coach, then the defense just shapes up a lot better. I think it's also Dan Campbell finally realizing that while he is still making some rookie head coach mistakes, just putting his nuts on the table and saying, I'm not going to back down from these calls anymore. Part of the reason earlier was he's supposed to be this big, loud, vibrant guy, and he was being very timid with the play calling. And I think as of late, he's like, you know what? We're just going to go have fun with it. Nothing to lose, really. We lose another game, we're definitely at the playoff picture. We win all our games, still might not be in the playoff picture, but we have a chance. And they do have a chance. They're currently just underneath the playoff scale. They're behind the Giants, who are just in, and, the Giants have a tie. Well, it'll be hard to overcome, but the Lions aren't that far away from making the playoffs. Yeah, they still might win out and still might not make the playoffs, but finishing 10-7 would be great to have, especially it'd be the first winning record in quite some time. Wouldn't be a playoff berth, which would be disappointing, but you got to build small. And honestly, I don't think many people saw them having as many wins as they do now, especially with the wins they have over the teams that they do currently. I'll even say this. I'm not a silver linings guy. I'm not. Although I do want to see teams play hard. You don't want to see them get blown out too many times. I've said that with the Pistons a few times, where if they play hard, if they get blown out once or twice, it's fine. But if they keep getting blown out by large margins, then playing hard doesn't matter. The Lions really haven't been blown out this year. They've had a few games against the Patriots, where the Patriots just straight up pants them. But for the most part, they lose. It's a close game. And they're fighting hard. They're trying hard. They're playing for their coach. They're playing for themselves. And that's something you really, really want to see in a sport like this.
I already see building blocks for next year. I mean, that's the thing that I look forward to, because I knew that going in, this is going to be a transition year. At least I hoped it was. And I was just going through the nightmare scenario when we're at that 1-6 stage going, oh, are we going to be 2-15 or something like that? I'm glad that's not the case.
I mean, even still, the best part, in my opinion, is the fact that while they are doing okay, winning or losing, if you're a Lions fan, the Rams are having a horrible season. And there's a talking head pundit, Bomani Jones, who I like a fair amount, was well, if the Lions keep winning, how are they going to get this star player in the next draft? And someone's well, they have the Rams first overall pick, and the Rams just keep losing. It got to the point where people were watching the Rams play, and the Lions fans were booing when the Rams pulled out a late win with Baker Mayfield going 98 yards drive to win it. People are there goes our draft pick. And I'm it's been a very long time since the Lions have been watching other teams hoping for them to lose, as opposed to watching their own team hoping that they lose to get other picks. It's working out all well for them. It kind of reminds you of that year where the Pistons had someone else's draft pick, the high pick, and ended up getting Darko Milicic after getting knocked out in the conference finals. And then they came back the next year and won the championship. I'm not saying the Lions will do that, but it reminds me of how, you know what, we're having a pretty good season, get some experience for our younger players, and now we're going to get a prime young player to join our roster. That's really all you can do when you're trying to build. That's a dream scenario, is to get a top prospect while continuing to still potentially make the playoffs.
All right, we've got that game coming up against the Jets this week. I'm reading some New York news, and they're saying that their quarterback, Mike White, will be in a position to play against the Lions on Sunday. He got knocked up in their loss to the Bills. What do you think on this one? What is your prediction? As I said, I think it's still going to be close, but I'm going to stick to my glass of Kool-Aid.
Mike White got lit up, and they were all legal hits. That's the scary part, is he was hit with some blows that were just as he released the ball, someone came and hit him in the ribs twice, and my football PTSD kicked in. I literally jumped back in my chair after the second one.
This should be a winnable game. They're sitting at 7-6. They're a comparable team.
It should be a winnable game, but the problem with the Lions is the Lions' issues on offense has always been the run game. It's been defending the quarterback and the run game. And while defending the quarterback's gotten a bit better and limiting sacks, the run game needs to produce more consistently. I know Jamal Williams has 14 touchdowns, but he has 14 touchdowns to lead the league and under 1,000 yards. Part of it's scheme, but part of it is a little bit worrisome that he does not have more yards. The Jets' strength is their secondary. Their D-line, the linebackers are all right to middling, but their secondary is their strength. I never thought I'd say this, but it'll be a duel of the potential rookies of the year defensively between Aiden Hutchinson and Sauce Gardner on the outside. So whoever plays well in this game, I think, gets a much bigger leg up. I think the Lions have a chance to win it. They're going to need Goff to play like Goff that got to the Super Bowl final and not the Goff that came right after that. That looks just like a muscular Ryan Gosling. Kind of threw like him a little bit too. I don't want to change my pick because I feel like if I change my pick, the Jets will definitely win. But I don't want to say the Jets and the Lions win and have another weekend of people texting me like, "Oh, look what you said," and look what I don't know. I guess for their sake, I'll say I still see the Jets winning a close game. So when the Lions do win, I guess I can be like, another one of the pundits who picked against them.
Fletcher, I have been excited to talk about this. We've got some big signings news, a couple of returns, and a new one. Let's talk the new person first. You've got the information. Let's do the download.
I know a lot of the people have been seeing players get re-signed. It's like, oh, that's cool. We're getting some of these players back, but when we're getting some new blood. And today is one of those chances. You probably have seen him the one time he came to Keyworth, scored a goal against Detroit City FC, albeit his team lost handedly. It is Skage Simonsen Leland, who is a 6'3" attacking mid forward from Norway, coming to Detroit by way of Loudoun United. 69th overall draft pick from DC United out of Southern Methodist University. His numbers at Loudoun are not great.
I mean, Loudoun's numbers are not great.
Yeah, it's kind of like someone giving you chicken poop and saying, make me chicken salad. And like, there's really nothing you can do at that point. If someone's like, give me lemonade, and they hand you like a block of sawdust, you're going to get a cup of sawdust. So his numbers, again, at Loudoun are not great. 2 goals and 7 assists, but he leads the team in goals plus assists with 9, leads the team in assists with 7, 6'3" attacking mid forward, and more like a control tower, someone who gets the ball and looks for other people. It's very helpful to have. It allows your wing players to kind of do stuff, allows the players underneath them to do stuff. I expect if he's playing with Maxey right behind him, I expect Maxey to have a pretty big season, crashing the box to get some extra shots. He was recommended to the team, actually, by 2 recently signed players, Stephen Carroll and Matty Lewis, who said that he was hard to play against both times they played against him. I remember the game at Keyworth where he ran a lot. Obviously, nothing really happened until they were up 4-0, but he scored the first goal to make it 4-1, which ended up being a 4-2 victory. In the game where they just kind of got rolled over by Detroit, which was a wet game, he moved around a lot that game. It's just at that point, he had no service. It was really crappy weather. And just as a forward, if you're not getting service, unless you want to come all the way back to get the ball, then there's really nothing you can do. And I'm not trying to write him off for that. But I think playing for a team that, to be frank, is just not very good. Everyone has a skill that they're good at, and some skills get muted. Some get exemplified, but some skills get muted when you play with certain styles, and Loudoun's style tend to limit his skill set to just a secondary thing.
Well, I mean, Trevor is pretty good at finding those kind of players, right? Like, let's not forget where Devon Amoo-Mensah came from, which he has been re-signed. We'll talk about that in a minute, but let's not forget that that's kind of a skill Trevor's got.
Yeah, I mean, that's not to take anything away from to say like Trevor obviously didn't scout this, but when your 2 of your center holds in the middle are like, hey, this guy was tough, didn't like playing against him, we should sign him. Yeah, that's a pretty good endorsement. Like,
He still pulled the trigger, though.
They obviously know who's hard to, and obviously they're going to be like, oh, well, playing against Messi's hard too. Can we sign? No, you can't. I think that's a good barometer. Obviously, yes, you see players playing, you see other things happening. You're like, we should sign them. But when you have 2 players who are like, this guy was really tough, if he's available, take him. He's young. It's a good opportunity to bring someone else in. I think he'll have maybe not a huge impact immediately, but I think he'll have a pretty good impact with the team, given what his strengths are and how the team has been able to kind of rally around players who have strengths like that.
Well, I feel like at 6'3", he adds some size, and if he can truly be a control tower, he'll kind of help bridge that gap, because losing Hopino still does kind of hurt in that.
Yeah, not that Hopino was like wheels of glory fast, but like Skage is more of a big body type who kind of like a lighthouse in the dark, where it's like, where do we go? And you see that big lighthouse just kind of boop. You look up, see the light there, and say, okay, we're looking to go directionally there. He's kind of a player where it's like, all right, he's in the middle there, lob the ball up to him, catch up, let him pass the ball around, then lob it into somebody else in the box. Hopino is more of get the ball to him and let him kind of see the field and then get it to somebody else in a way where they can contribute, or a corner kick special. Like Skage at 6'3" should not be taking corner kicks.
No.
If he's taking corner kicks, it's because Declan or Reese or Maxey is hurt, which is a different conversation to be having about something else. But no, he should not be taking corner kicks with someone that big. But yeah, like you said, it adds some size. It allows them to become more able to defend set pieces a bit better, which I know was a bit of a thorn in their side last year. So yeah, to have more size, have someone who has some talent, has some very talented bloodlines, as he is the second cousin of Norway international record breaker and Manchester City superstar Erling Haaland. So not to say that, he'll turn into that, but if your cousin is as talented as Erling Haaland, you obviously have to have some talent too. I mean, blood is blood.
Yeah, I'm interested to see how this plays out. I'm excited for this signing, actually.
To that point, my cousin ran the Olympics, so that means I'm talented too.
We all know you're talented, Fletcher Sharpe. So I teased Devon Amoo-Mensah, let the cat out of the bag. I mean, if you follow the team, you should know he's re-signed. It gives me a huge sigh of relief to see him back on the field for Le Rouge.
Yeah, up until that injury, and this is like hopefully not a cynical way of looking. It is a cynical way of looking at it, but hopefully people understand the point I'm trying to make. If you're a big fan of Detroit City FC, you should be somewhat glad he got hurt when he got hurt. Not that you want to see a player get hurt, but if he continued playing the way he was playing, I'm fairly certain that someone would have signed him. Even still, he was my pick for the Black Arrow MVP after his injury because when he left, the defense was still pretty good, but it dropped a bit. And you could tell
it took him some games to recover.
Right, you could tell it dropped a bit, even though like they still finished top 5 in goals allowed. Like they still had a pretty solid defense, but they were playing out of their mind back there. And Devon was playing in a role that the next person we're going to bring up tried to fill somewhat admirably at times, somewhat not as great, but he still filled the role nonetheless. Devon is, I knew when he played for the Stars, I knew that he could move with the ball well. I knew that he could attack the ball well. My biggest worry was he'd pick up a bunch of yellow cards because he attacked the ball a little bit too hard with the Stars. And I realized it's because the Stars have no one back there. So you have to tackle hard or else, they're going to round you and score. I didn't realize until he played with Detroit that he had such deftness on the ball for his passing. I didn't realize that he could get the ball, move it up a little bit and play some passes and, act kind of like a somewhat default center defensive mid who can stand in front of the other two defenders and get the ball, but also can play it back on the line and still be solid. So yeah, to see him back on the field, hopefully after he recovers as well as he can, is a great sign. I think if he's as healthy as he can be, I know ACL injuries are hard to come back from, but if he can come back at least be 80%, 90% as good as he was before, Detroit might have the best back line in the league.
And that's good news. As far as signings, let's end with Michael Bryant, who is a huge fan favorite, who's made a huge impact on this team in a lot of ways. Like he's just connected with people in a big way. And I am glad to see him come back. I hope that some of the rough edges get smoothed out on the field, but I'm glad to see him come back.
Yeah, every team needs players that like the fans look at and they're like, I love this guy. And they need a player who sees the fans doing that and is going to be like, I'm going to get involved in this too. And Detroit have theirs back with Michael Bryant, who is a decent player on the field. He's kind of the Swiss Army knife in terms of he saw action as a midfielder, a right wing back, left wing back, and center back, all for the team last year because of injuries. And honestly, without a player of his caliber able to play those positions all at a passable level at the very least, they would have been in some trouble. Because they only had 2 wingbacks on the roster, Reese and Declan. So if you don't have someone who can provide cover for them a little bit, those players get beat up and run down, which is unfortunately what happened to them during the season. But again, because they had Michael Bryant, they were able to give them somewhat of a rest until they came back. Is Michael Bryant a starter right now? If Devon comes back healthy, no. But to have a player like that on the bench who can, at a moment's notice, come in for somebody, whether it's on the wings, or whether it's as a midfield kind of help, after a goal scored, if you need someone to kind of help generate some extra pressure, someone just to run around like a chicken with their head cut off, just to provide some extra pressure on the wings. It's good to have a player like that. Every successful team needs players who, like baseball, for example, they need a utility player who can play a bunch of positions. It's like maybe he's not the best infielder, but we can put him at shortstop or third or second for a few innings just to lock some stuff down, then watch him go hit. Maybe we can put him in any of the outfield positions. Maybe he can be a catcher for a little bit. So you had to have a player who can play all along the back line, even help a little bit in the middle, maybe potentially even press a bit up further. Scored some goals for you as well. Not just some headed goals, but some goals with his feet. So yeah, you have a player who can do that. But like you said, the rough edges, a few not so great challenges that led to some bad issues, a few whiffs that led to some goals. You want to see those get cleaned up, but obviously, if he's back, with a team activating his second year in his contract, clearly that they have faith that can be done. So it's very good to see the players who've helped put Detroit in a pretty good spot for the most part get to come back.
Oh yeah, I have faith that can happen too. I think those are the kind of things that just happen with time. People forget, like, he's a young guy.
Yeah, I'm not trying to, like, I know it sounded pretty like I'm coming down. I'm not trying to.
Same here. Like, I was worried that, like, people are like, oh no, it's the kind of thing that just gets better with time.
Yeah, and it's just from the standpoint of, like, being in professional sports, like, yes, some players are young. Yes, some players are still learning. You understand that. But if they're thrust in positions where, like, they need to do certain things in the field a bit more, you kind of are like, I know you're young, but we need to see that you don't do this thing again. So you'd like to hope that the situation in Miami where made one wrong step and they scored, next time they play against Miami and it's late like that, doesn't make the situation, boom, they get the win instead of a draw. So, yeah, it's just the team has faith that's going to be the case, or else they wouldn't have re-signed him because they had the option with his second year of his contract. So clearly if they activate it, they know that we have faith this is going to get fixed. We have faith this guy's going to help us propel us forward. And yeah, that's really all you want to see as a fan is players there who want to be there, which he definitely does. He's one of the more vocal ones about talking to the fans after the game, taking selfies with anyone that he can. So like I said, every team needs a player who sees the fans clamoring for them and is like, I will be that guy. And to have someone come back who's a big fan favorite, whether it's like supporters, whether it's just the regular fans, whoever, never going to be a bad thing for your club.
100%. He's a great ambassador for the club, and it's so exciting to see him back out there. If there was one place where you would put Michael in a perfect world, where would you stick him? Like, on the field?
Honestly, I like him better as a wing back than I do as a center defender.
Really?
Because he's a pretty good crosser of the ball, a pretty good defending wing. If he gets beat on the wing, there's typically someone there to help. When he gets beat in the middle as a center back, there's Nate. And that's it. And if Nate doesn't stop it, it's a goal. And I've seen a few times where he got beat, and then someone else got beat, and then someone else got beat, and then it ended up being a goal. And like, yeah, I'd prefer him to be on the wing to where he can just focus on defending people from cutting in and getting the ball into the box. But to choose wing defender, center back, center mid in that order.
Okay. There are still 4 names out there we don't really have updates on. Dominic Gasso, Bosch Tanya, those are 2 names that, are younger names. Declan Wynn and Nate Steinwasser. I got a feeling this is going to come together in time, but I want to acknowledge it on the air that we see it because I get the emails, and the number 1 email is, where's Nate? Is Nate resigned? That's always the question. So I want to acknowledge that I see you. I don't have something new for you, but I see you.
As soon as we are made aware of what's happening, we will make sure everyone is aware as soon as possible.
Some not great news coming out of the Pistons camp. Fletcher Sharpe, Cade Cunningham, his season is done.
Yeah, there's a small chance that he might play at the end of the year, but he elected to have season-ending shin surgery, which that's fine. They're not really playing for anything right now. We knew they weren't probably going to make the playoffs. They're a very, 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 very dark horse team to make the playoffs.
Well, right now they are last in 7-22.
Yeah, the young kids are developing. While he's been out, there have been some good things we've seen. Jalen Duren has been playing pretty well. Killian Hayes has shown that like he actually is an NBA player by putting up some solid numbers. So yeah, while you want to see Cade there to have these things happen with him there, it's also good to see other players who aren't getting as much of the ball play a bit better to show that they actually do belong on this roster next year. Though upside is Cade said that he should be making a full recovery for the 2023-2024 season. So that's a good thing to know. It's just right now that it probably doesn't need to go on the court and play.
All right, Fletcher Sharpe, it's so good to see you.
Yeah, likewise.
Feedback, as always, dailydetroit@gmail.com. With that, I'm Jer Stays. Remember that you are somebody, and we'll see you around Detroit.